Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington, Saturday the 23rd of January, 2021. A week from now, I will be giving my last daily message, so I'd like to get through the book of Leviticus, and I'm not sure what we'll do with the rest of next week. I guess I'll figure that out when I get there. But today, I've still got some more to go. So good morning, or as my German ancestors would say, Guten Morgen. Or as I often have said to my best friend, whose name is Tom Morgan, Morgan, Morgan. Speaking of which, his grandfather, Frank, had a cabin. I didn't meet his grandfather, Frank. Tom was the youngest of Frank and Jesse's grandchildren. I met Jesse. Jesse had 3 kids, Frank Jr. and Sal and Clay, who was Tom's dad. Tom became my best friend. He and I, years later, 6 decades, remain best friends. It's amazing and it's enduring, and I feel like I grew up as part of the Morgan clan. One of the things that Frank did, he had the foresight to sign a 99-year lease way back when on a piece of land that was on a hill right above Payette Lake in the city of McCall, Idaho, a beautiful resort town. 99-year lease. That cabin would be in the family forever. Well, you know what? Frank has been gone a long time, as I say. Tom and I are in our 60s. Tom's dad has been gone a long time. Tom's mom died a few years ago, and we're the oldest generation in our family, even though he and I are the youngest of our siblings. Nonetheless, time marches on, and the lease expired on that land. The Forest Service then rebid it out, and instead of these ramshackle cabins made with extra plywood left over from when the railroad had come through there, or 2x4s and rail ties, now there are $1 million 6-bedroom vacation homes from Idaho's wealthy all over that side, which is on Warren Wagon Road in McCall, Idaho. And I've been up there since, and wow, I have a family member who owns one of the places up there too. So I have not stayed in it, but I have visited it. Yeah. Time marches on, though. We don't own stuff forever. It just seems like forever. My parents bought a house in '57 on the Bench in Boise. It was the last subdivision on the west side of town. Ustick Road, which was just up the block, kind of turned to a gravel road just beyond that, and they gradually paved that on out to the town of Meridian. Well, my goodness, Ustick is a 5-lane road, and every half mile there are these massive intersections of 5 lanes meeting 5 lanes, and 500,000 people in an area that is almost foreign to me now. It's just grown so much. Time marches on. 57 years after my parents moved in, they died, and we sold the house. We thought it would be ours forever. None of us have use for it. We don't live in Idaho. My parents had the foresight 40 years ago to build a cabin with their next door neighbors. A cabin I hope to visit here in the next few weeks. A cabin I cherish that we still own along with the next door neighbors. My brother and sister and I each own 1/3 of a half. It's part of our legacy and pretty much our connection to the great state of Idaho, where we have our roots. Time marches on. In chapter 25 of the book of Leviticus, we have 2 very interesting ways of marking time. And I have a dog who just wants, I've got to show you. Hi, there you go. He just wants to play, don't you? Do you want something? I'll go out and throw a ball with you. Yeah, it's kind of wet and messy out there after the snow a few days ago, but no, I guess it's pretty well dried off. We'll be right out and we'll throw the ball. Chapter 25, verse 1. Speak to the people of Israel, that same formula we've seen. When you enter the land I'm giving you, the land shall observe a Sabbath to the Lord. This is the first we hear of this. The land itself will have a Sabbath year. 6 years you shall sow your field. 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in their yield. In the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for the land. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your unpruned vine. It shall be a complete rest for the land. You may eat what the land yields during its Sabbath. You, your male and female slaves, your hired and bound laborers who live with you, your livestock also. For the wild animals in your land, yield shall be food. Okay, there's 3 things I want to hit there. First of all, it says, you will not reap the aftergrowth of the harvest or gather grapes from an unpruned vine. You're not allowed to prune the vine, and you're not allowed to have the grapes. But you may eat what the land yields. Okay, so, but if it's still growing, anything what still grows? Well, vines and orchards, they produce aftergrowth. If it's new growth, you can't eat off of it. But if it's from the old growth, you can eat off of it. You just can't actively harvest it. You can eat what's on the ground. You can eat what the field has produced. You don't take what you glean from the grain, from the barley or the wheat. It falls, becomes seed, and you can then eat what the stalks produce. But you can't actively farm that field. Now, that led to the practice of allowing certain fields to lie fallow, which we find to be actually a good agricultural wisdom, because certain fields you deplete all of the nutrients by growing the same crop. Sometimes you rotate crops, but sometimes letting a field lie fallow allows the land to recover. So this is a way of God telling them, let the land recover from your actively farming it year after year after year. Give it a break. And so they began then to divide their land up into 7s, and so they could have one piece of land lying fallow at any given time. And then they wouldn't, otherwise, think of what they're saying here, that if the entire community, hundreds of thousands of people, didn't farm for a whole year, well, they'd better save up. But it's God's way of saying, in 6 days, you can earn enough food for 7 days of eating. In 6 years, you can earn enough off the land for 7 years of eating. So it's a way of saying, respect the land that feeds you. Respect the people that work for you. Now, the second thing, this mentions female slaves, hired male slaves, bound laborers. They came out of Egypt as slaves with this pledge that slavery would never again befall them. They would not be slaves to anyone, but they would own slaves. So the foreigners in the land that they're now marching through, some of them end up being bound laborers or slaves. Again, time marches on. Verse 8. You shall count off 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the period of 7 weeks of years gives 49 years. Then you shall have the trumpet sound aloud on the 10th day of the 7th month, the Day of Atonement. You shall have the trumpet sounded throughout all your land, and you shall hallow the 50th year, and you shall proclaim liberty throughout the land to its inhabitants. It shall be for you a jubilee year. So this 50th year, the year after the 7 sevens, is a jubilee, and it begins not on the 10th day of the 1st month, which is during the Passover. It begins on the 10th day of the 7th month, which is, and again, this seems to be how Jewish New Year began. The idea that the Jubilee year begins not in the 1st month, but in the 7th month. Not as you're entering the growing season, but as you have just finished harvesting from your season. And You shall hallow the 50th year, proclaim liberty throughout the land, all inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee year for you. Every one of you return to your property, every one of you to your family. The jubilee year, you shall not sow or reap the aftergrowth or harvest the unpruned vines. You shall eat only what the field itself produces. In the year of your jubilee, you shall return, every one of you, to your property. When you make a sale to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor, you shall not cheat one another. When you buy from your neighbor, you shall pay the number of years since the jubilee. And so this idea that slaves are freed during jubilee, bound workers are set free. So you can have that 99-year lease on that U.S. Forest Service land, on Warren Wagon Road, on Payette Lake and McCall, but the time will come when it's not yours, when the 99-year lease is up, when the Jubilee comes. The year of Jubilee, proclaiming captive are free. And this comes into the language of Isaiah when Jesus is in the synagogue in Nazareth preaching. He quotes that the Jubilee reference in Isaiah. The captives are free, the blind see. The land is now returning to its inhabitants. There is no historical or archaeological evidence to suggest that they ever obeyed God's command to do that. The Jubilee remains a beautiful concept at the heart of what justice, human justice, means. Justice for the land, for the animals, for the environment, for people, for families. And it never happened. Why not? Oh, I'm guessing they got to that 50th year and they're going, this would cost too much. I'm not going to do it. You going to do it? Nah. So who loses? The poor, the ones who wanted to be set free, the slaves, the land, the animals who needed rest, the ones who had no voice. Who gained? Those who already had enough. Some things never change.